Dear friends, it's my pleasure to introduce a good friend of mine, Aleksandr Yampolskiy, who's the founder of an unbelievable company, SecurityScorecard, uh, that is focused on providing cybersecurity to many, many companies around the world. And we would like to discuss the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in a realm of cybersecurity and cyber attacks that are happening now. Alex, it's a pleasure to welcome you.
It's good to be with you.
Alex, can you please, first of all, share, a few words about yourself?
Sure. Well, I'm a cybersecurity expert. I've always been fascinated with cybersecurity ever since I was a child. My friend brought me this video game, Prince of Persia, and infected it with a virus, and I was determined to know how it works. So I pursued my passion. After I immigrated into United States and became a citizen, I did my PhD in cryptography at Yale, studied in Sinai Academy under your leadership. So just learning about my Jewish heritage and Jewish culture was incredibly important for me. And after I finished my PhD, I worked for companies like Microsoft, Goldman Sachs, Oracle. At Goldman Sachs, I led a team responsible for all of their authentications and entitlements. Every time you typed a password or authorized a stock trade, I built it for them. And then I became a chief security officer for an e-commerce company called Guild Group. And that's where the idea for SecurityScorecard was born. And the basic idea is we are security scores to measure security. If you drive a car, you have a speedometer showing to you how fast you drive. If you go to a doctor, they measure your blood pressure. In cybersecurity, it turned out that there was no such concept. People would invest millions of dollars into different technologies, yet they had no idea if they're becoming safer or not. So we pioneered the concept of measuring security, and fast forward into today, we're between 500 to 600 employees worldwide, over 2,800 customers across 46 countries. 70% of the Fortune 100 uses us, top banks, top vaccine manufacturers, healthcare, pharmaceuticals, insurance companies. So kind of building a future together to make the world a safer place, which is our mission.
And I remember, Alex, when there was a discussion about Russian interference in elections in the United States, you were interviewed everywhere by Fox News, by CNN, by many other companies as a recognized expert in cybersecurity. And it's not just a matter of kind of fighting criminals who are trying to break into banks or hospitals and demand ransom. That is really warfare. So warfare on the battlefield, in the air, in the sea, is expanded to the cyber area. And my question for you, can you please comment on two wars? One war of Russian Federation against Ukraine in the cyber security field, and also on the war of Hamas and terrorists against Israel, and if there is any link between the two.
Well, I think that the boundaries between kinetic warfare in real life and the digital warfare, the cyber warfare, it all became extremely blurred together. So, for example, in Ukraine, there's an active drone warfare. While we're talking about the theory of artificial intelligence and large language models, in Ukraine, actually, it's already being used on the battlefield. 3 months before the invasion, the Ukrainians were thinking about how to hack their own infrastructure to make sure that they protect it and that it cannot be hacked by the Russians. There are definitely certain linkages. For example, we've done research, and there's a hacker group called Kilnet. There's a Russian hacktivist group called Kilnet that always promoted, geopolitical concepts. Actually, as a matter of fact, back in March, SecurityScorecard reported about a botnet, right? Like it's an army of computers that are infected by this Russian group called Kilnet. and we called that botnet жадность, means greed in English. But that botnet was being used to attack infrastructure in Ukraine to try to take it down. And so you see certain type of similar fingerprints that you could apply to identify the adversary. And we've observed a Palestinian affiliate or a subgroup of the Russian hacktivist group KillNet that also tried to use similar type of techniques against Israeli targets. So there's definitely certain linkages, and the same hacktivist groups that are involved in one war are very much involved in some other type of conflicts. So there is interrelationship between the two.
And the other one is called KillNet Palestine?
Yes.
And the tactics they used or technology they used leave kind of fingerprints in terms of that both interconnected?
Yeah, if you pay close attention, you can start, if you pay close attention as a security researcher, you can start noticing certain type of fingerprints in a software or techniques of an attack being used. And by looking at those similarities, you can start attributing it to a specific hacker group.
And is that possible that KillNet is independent underground organization or crime group that is not connected to the Kremlin regime?
Look, everything is possible, but I think in our experience, it's quite hard to operate, a hacker group in Russia if it's not condoned by the local government. So just in general, I think if a couple of years ago, the political involvement tried to hide the activity, right now, it's not even being hidden. So, for example, we observed a Telegram channel where you post tools, you post articles about how to go attack US targets, hospitals, healthcare, schools, and it's actively being encouraged and condoned in Russia by the local authorities. They're never going to admit it. They're always going to assume plausible deniability. But, the fact is, the cyber warfare is real, and it's been condoned and encouraged by the governments.
Was an interference in American elections?
Yeah, definitely. I think that definitely was an attempted interference. Whether or not it succeeded or not, I don't think that it really succeeded, in my professional opinion. I don't think it succeeded, but I think that the attempt to manipulate the public opinion, to use armies of trolls, is very real. It's going to continue. And actually, with the advent of AI, it's becoming easier because now people can create deepfake videos where they can see a video with you, imitate your voice, imitate your video, create very sophisticated attacks. There are armies of people and robots which go repost certain type of articles on Facebook, on Twitter, on various type of forums to try to drive mass hysteria and opinion. And, it's very much actively being done as we speak.
And just as a summary of our discussion, we wanted together with you to draw some kind of conclusions. Is Russian Federation a neutral observer of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, or in some way participant?
Well, the conflict definitely is helping them because it deflects the dialogue from a Russian-Ukrainian war. So if you look at the media, if you look at the topic for the government, now all of a sudden it's shifted to Israel versus Palestine conflict. And
versus Ukraine, you mean? Israel versus Ukraine?
Well, the Israeli-Palestine conflict is convenient for Russia to distract opinion from a Russian-Ukraine conflict. So I would say
resources as well, not only attention, resources and arms.
Attention and resources and funding. So I think it's a very convenient distraction. I think Russians definitely benefit from the situation.
I know that you're from Moscow and I'm from Moscow, right?
I was born in Moscow. My dad was born in Ukraine, And then, we're Jewish, so we immigrated to New York when I was 14 years old. So now you're like, hey, you have relatives involved in the Israeli conflict because we have some of our relatives immigrated to Israel. Then you're observing the horrible situation that's happening between Russia and Ukraine. So it's definitely a very terrible and stressful time to observe and live in. It definitely touches close home.
So as someone who actually studied in a Jewish high school and got some kind of a moral training, what do you think a moral stand of the either Jewish community or mankind observing these conflicts?
Nobody should attack each other. Violence and aggression has no place in the modern world. But listen, if you are attacked as Israel, who did nothing and they were attacked, then guess what? The perpetrators need to be brought to justice. That's it. So Hamas is a terrorist organization. They need to be eradicated. It's not just Israelis who suffer, by the way, but also innocent Palestinians because of Hamas, right? So it's a terrible humanitarian situation. And, I actually just recently did an interview, which is going to air this Tuesday, on Tuesday, December the 19th. It's going to air in a couple of days. And I did an interview with a very famous chief security officer who was a CISO for Facebook, for Cloudflare, for like many top companies, but he's also currently CEO of a nonprofit called Ukrainian Friends. And so he's traveling to Ukraine. He traveled to Ukraine many times to meet Ukrainian children and, local Jews and just non-Jews, everybody. And he brings laptops to donate to the kids there. And I asked him one question during the interview that I asked him, as I said, what do you think is not being covered by the media about the Russian-Ukrainian conflict right now, the Russian-Ukrainian war? Like, what do you think is not being covered by the media? And he said, as the war progressed, when it started, the television, the media covered the cost, the human capital cost. And right now, as it kind of dragged on, somehow this human cost, that the people being killed, that the families who are reading in dark because they're afraid to turn on the light, that the kids whose parents been killed and they're displaced, this humanitarian cost gets forgotten. All of a sudden it becomes desensitized. Oh, it's a Russian-Ukrainian war. And so I think that's the piece that we gotta never forget. There's a big human cost, and I just really hope that it's gonna stop as soon as possible, and we gotta live in peace.
I totally agree with you. And actually, I can only say that for many, many years, Jewish people were traumatized by the Holocaust, but not just by the murderers, but by the silence of the world. And it is our time now not to be silent when we're witnessing other nation being attacked and slaughtered and suffering. So in a way, I cannot be silent when I see aggression against another nation. And definitely, we have to eradicate terrorists. But I wanted to add another dimension to you. We had the Hanukkah holiday. And the interesting question is like, what is a victory? What are we celebrating? If we're celebrating victory, why don't we parade? And what is lighting candle? What it's all about? Especially in a realm of discussion of what kind of victory we want to see against terrorists. And the question is, there are 2 million Palestinian Arabs living in Gaza. Yes, 40,000 active terrorists, but overwhelming majority of those people were brainwashed by the propaganda and the educational system of terrorism, similarly to what's going on in Judea and Samaria by Palestinian Authority. They were raised already for 30 years since Oslo Accords, hate and kill a Jew. was like kind of a slogan of the educational system. So the idea of Hanukkah is lighting the candle. It's not just to kill physically the enemy, but really to denazify and shed the light. So your field of cybersecurity and ability to share true information, not disinformation, and stand against hatred is crucially important in re-educating the world to shed the light.
It all starts with education, and I think the light symbolizes hope. The light symbolizes a victory over darkness, and you gotta be, I don't know if you heard of the concept of Stockdale paradox, but I like to kind of quote it. It actually applies in business, but it applies very much in life also, not just in business. But James Stockdale, Admiral Stockdale, was a prisoner of war during Vietnam War. And, after he got released, he became a decorated war hero. He received the Congressional Medal of Honor. And they asked him, how did you get out? Like, how did you get out when so many people died? And you taught them, you coached them. He said, I never lost optimism. I never lost hope that I would get out. They're like, okay, that's great. But so many other people also, never lost hope. Like, why did they die? Why did they perish? And he said, they never lost hope, but they always thought they would get out before New Year's. And I knew it's going to take longer. So the Stockdale paradox, I think, it applies to the current conflict. It applies to business. How do you maintain unwavering optimism? But at the same time, while maintaining this optimism, you look the situation how it is, and you confront the brutal facts of reality while maintaining that optimism. And so I think this Stockdale paradox is something that we'll need to embody and live in the current situation.
And that's what you're talking about, the secret of resilience.
Resilience, but also optimism, right? Resilience with confronting reality and optimism. But resilience, I think, is tenacity, resilience, great. I think it's one of the superpowers actually of Jewish people, right? Like it's one of the superpowers, and especially immigrants, because, look, I remember, I think it's a story for most people, when we immigrated to US, to Brooklyn, we had no chairs to sit on, so we would go pick up chairs that people would throw out on the streets of Brooklyn. I would walk by and I would see people sitting in a restaurant drinking a coffee, and I couldn't even afford to have a cup of coffee. And but you learn to work hard. And I think this sense of resilience is very important. Like once you have it, you never give up. So every single day, I start proving myself from scratch. I think the sense of perseverance and resilience is very, very important.
Maybe another just borrowed from Hanukkah idea, because some people say that the light of Hanukkah is, to shine through darkness or kind of push away darkness. That light pushes darkness away. But the Jewish concept of that is that God actually created darkness first out of nothing, and then shaped light from the darkness. We see darkness as a fuel for light. And the greater the darkness, the greater the potential for light to emerge. So when you see a challenge, I don't want to call it a problem, you can say, oh, why this challenge is coming my way, and run away. But you can say, hey, there is an opportunity. And I can turn this darkness into light. I can turn this crisis into light. And very possible, even the war in Ukraine, a war in Israel, is an opportunity for your business to emerge as much greater player in the conflict and a peacemaker.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I don't know if I like using the word business in that context, because whenever you use the word business, it almost implies like you're trying to profit from it or you're trying to make money. But I would say I would rather use the word technology
or mission,
technology or mission or innovation.
Mission.
And look, I think we're seeing I very much agree with the statement because look, if you look at a cyber and kinetic arena, there was a lot of disinformation, malicious parties manipulating elections, manipulating the public opinion. So now a lot of people are inventing and thinking of ways to combat misinformation. In Ukraine, there's a lot of incredible innovation about drone warfare because they did not have a lot of resources. How do you use the drones, which are much, much cheaper than a tank, right? Tank costs $4 or $5 million. A drone costs $1,000. So there was a lot of ingenuity of how to use that type of innovation to combat an enemy with much bigger forces. So any type of situations like that are terrible. They need to finish, but it also leads to ingenuity and innovation as well.
That can be used for good.
That can be used for good, exactly.
And that is our blessings and hope. And I hope that we're going to see many great innovations that will make this world a better and safer place. Thank you so much, Alex.
Thank you, Robert. It's a pleasure to talk to you.